It's a predominantly white town. But I think it was good to grow up in the environment in which I grew up, because it was it was interesting, because during Black History Month, we're hearing about the way that white people have always treated, and this is coming from white teachers no less, but how there still exists a systemic racism against Black people or whatever. And I got to see a juxtaposition between what my teachers were telling me about how brutally Black people are treated in America, versus the way that my white friends, and not even my white friends, my white classmates were treating me on a day-to-day basis in school. It was like a night and day difference. And so as a kid, you can just observe, like, okay, somebody's lying, either my own eyes or what I'm hearing in the classroom. And so for me, as somebody who had that experience on the one hand and grew up in the church on the other hand, where I'm learning the gospel, where I'm learning the truth, quite frankly.
Don't lose your point. I just want to add for clarity.
Yeah.
Growing up in the church, predominantly Black church, or is it mixed race church?
It was a predominantly Black church.
Gotcha.
In Texas,
Yep.
in Arlington, Texas. So it's not a very doctrinally sound church. Let me just tell you that.
Know them well.
But it was a church nonetheless, and we did have access and exposure to the gospel insofar that we had Bible study. So we were, at Sunday school, we would have to read the Bible, and you're getting glimpses of the gospel and of the truth therein. And I think that shaped me more than I realized growing up, because as I came of age, and especially as I got into researching, I'm a researcher by nature, is what I do in my off time. But as soon as I started getting into the research, and I'm seeing how this whole, like with civil rights in particular, civil rights was used basically to knock Black folks off at square, quite frankly. We had everything going for us. If you talk to a lot of older Black folks, such as I have, and ask them about their upbringing, ask them about their childhood, and you learn that, their pharmacist was Black, the doctor was Black, the family physician, the grocer was Black, the mailman was Black. If you're a young child and everybody you see who is doing their thing, who's being productive, who is being industrious, is Black, there is no question of, oh, we need to hire more Black teachers because they need somebody who looks like them, who isn't a drug dealer, to live up to. That's a new phenomenon. That hasn't always been the case here in the United States. And so what happened? How did we get knocked off our square? It's important to tell that story. And if you're somebody who's pro-Black, you should want to hear this story. You should want to hear how he got knocked off the square. Not that you might shake your fist at MLK, but that you might resolve not to ever fall for the rhetoric of a demagogue again, because it's up to you to have discernment. The Bible tells us that in the end, we will all turn to teachers who will tell us what our itching ears want to hear, who are going to tickle our itching ears. And that's all of us, Black or white. And so the point of making a documentary like this isn't that you might harbor hatred in your heart for MLK or the civil rights movement, but that you might know the way that this rhetoric works, the way that social justice movements work, and resolve never to fall for it again, because they pulled a fast one on us.
You used the word demagogue, and most people, when they think about Martin Luther King, oh, he was a racial uniter. Mm-mm. You say demagogue.
Total
Why?
demagogue. Because he exploited a grievance, and where there was no grievance, he created one rhetorically. Many people don't know this, but a lot of his speeches weren't even written by him.
I think people kind of know that now, but they kind of maybe assume, well, isn't that everybody? Don't presidents have speech writers?
He was a minister. I can understand a politician. having a speechwriter. He was a minister. How many pastors do you know have their speeches or sermons written by Jewish communists, atheists who hate God? Like how many ministers do you know have their sermons written by such people?
Ministry is a calling, and so I'm making your point.
Right.
Like, God is calling you to the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
He's not giving you the message through atheists and people that think Jesus is burning in hell in a vat of manure. He's not giving it to people that are totally hostile to Jesus Christ.
Right.
It's a minister being called is basically saying, I'm on a communication wavelength with God, and the things I'm saying are ordained by
And biblical,
yeah,
mind you,
yeah,
and biblical. And so his speeches are written by Clarence Jones, a Marxist, Stanley Levison, a Marxist, Bayard Rustin, a Marxist, Jack Odell, a Marxist, and sometimes by him, also a Marxist. And so the fact is, what he's doing is he's using, I guess, kind of a gospel tinge or a biblical tinge to a lot of his sermons. Because I've actually listened to a lot of his sermons and read most of his sermons. He never calls people to repentance. He never preaches the gospel. And he never really references the Bible without tying it to some, in his day, modern political, program or legislation or what have you. And so he was utilitarian insofar that he saw the Bible as a kind of utility. You might recall in the documentary where he said, I felt that if religion was going to be relevant, we have to, and these were his words, if religion's going to be relevant, we have to apply it to some kind of social action here and now. So he utilized the scriptures and utilized the Christian faith to push something more nefarious, not to call people to repentance at all. And so to take it back to one of your previous questions, again, like, we as Black people fell for it, and we haven't been the same since. And so it's important to learn the story so that we don't fall for it again. He was a demagogue insofar that he exploited the grievance that was there in some cases and created one where there wasn't. Because to the point that I tried to make earlier, if you are a Black child and everybody who's successful is Black, you aspire to be like them, but here along comes this Negro minister telling you the Negro still is not free in his I Have a Dream speech, telling you that white people are living in this vast country of wealth and flowing with milk and honey, where the Negro is starving on an island of poverty amongst this affluent country and all this other stuff. That's a problem. That does something to you psychologically. That's what demagogues do. They instill within you a sense of bitterness, a sense of despair, such to where you cry out and ask, what shall we then do? And then what does the demagogue do? Well, vote for this politician. Pass this legislation. He tried to, of course, impose something called the Poor People's Campaign, where he's lobbying the government to give us universal basic income and all these other socialist policies. And the reason why he even launched the Poor People's Campaign is because he felt that LBJ's so-called war on poverty didn't go far enough. And so, in my opinion, he was worse than LBJ. And this isn't a personal attack. It's just looking at the facts for what they are and coming up with a conclusion.
He certainly radicalized Black people into a victim's mindset.
Exactly.
And so whatever radicalization they love to talk about now, Islam or these radical jihadist groups, or they've been radicalized online. But Martin Luther King radicalized Black people into seeing themselves as victims and being angry at a certain group of people for making them victims, where I don't think, in my study and in talking to just my parents and grandparents, they didn't have that victim mentality. And it's certainly what, when I was born in 1967, in my upbringing, I didn't have grandparents or my parents, you're a victim, you can't make it. And I was getting the opposite message. You're a Christian. We fought for some freedoms that you now can enjoy. Don't bring me no excuses. Mm-hmm. I want to hear, go out and conquer. And I've seen that messaging all change, obviously, but I think part of like the sensitivity as it relates to Martin Luther King is some people will listen to what our conversation, they'll watch your documentary, and they'll say to themselves more than they'll say